Hello, hello. Good evening. Good evening. Happy Sunday. All right, you all. Give me just a moment. Yeah, I told series. Super passionate about all of the work, all of our different topics, but this particular series has been very near and dear to my heart. So I've been prompted to make some slides to kind of help you see the flow, some slides to help you see and remember some of the strategies. So give me just a moment to get those pulled up. Let's do that. All right. Hey, hey, thank you for joining. We're pulling up the slides. Like I said, listen, I want to be clear because I don't want to get y'all too spoiled. Okay, thinking that every time we're going to have slides is something about this series. I've just been led to have a couple of visuals along the way here, right? So that's what we're working with. That's what we're focused on. Because again, especially during this summertime, right? A lot of times people talk about the summer slide and think about the academic side. Y'all know at Holistic Fluency, we talk about the social emotional well being, right? With the academics. So we're talking about the other side of the report card, right? So some of the citizenship things, some of the behavioral comments, and maybe some of the motivation behind that. So thank you again for joining so much. Week three, it's the third week. We only have a couple more left, right? I'm thinking about giving y'all a bonus. I like the feedback and things. I like that you all are applying the tools literally. As soon as I finished last week's session, I got a phone call, right? Just giving me some feedback, people sliding in DMs. So listen, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep having this conversation, doing the work. This evening, though, a very, very special topic, right? They're all special, they're all layered and by design. But this evening, we're talking about motivation. So, motivation versus manipulation, because sometimes that line gets blurry for people, especially when it's adults dealing with young people. But we're going to make sure that we are able to get some tools, have some conversation where we can help without hovering. Okay, so we're going to be addressing burnout, some of those screen time battles. We're going to just, again, the summertime slide, there's some stress that comes with that, but definitely giving you all, again, some real tools, some real strategies that you can use. So, my first my first question to you is, what if your child really isn't just being lazy? What if that's not them? What if that's not where they're coming from? What if they're just running on E? They're tapped out, right? Emotionally, they're tapped out academically. So, again, welcome back to the other side of the report card. This is week three of the series, and it might hit close to home. I hope it does. I hope that this resonates with a lot of people while we're talking about motivation slash the lack of it, right? Let me give you all a moment. Please do use the chat. I want you to finish this sentence for me. When my child is unmotivated, I usually feel blank. You fill in the blank. When my child is unmotivated, I usually feel, and I'm going to give y'all a moment to fill in that blank. One more time, fill in the sentence. Marinate on it if you need to. When my child is unmotivated, I usually feel blank. Y'all fill in that blank, okay? While y'all are thinking, I'm going to jump in and say a little bit more just in case you're new in this space. So, my name is Anika S. Jones. I'm the founder of Holistic Fluency, which is an education consulting firm. And here in this space, right, we are reimagining how families, how educators connect with math and each other. So that's how we balance and talk about and develop both the social emotional, that emotional intelligence side, as well as some good, solid math foundation skills so we can build up from there. Okay, so you can read. I'm never the person that's going to really read so much from the slides. So you all can see that there while we're checking in. So we're finishing the sentence. Those of you just tuning in, we're finishing the sentence. When my child is unmotivated, I usually feel blank. Okay, talk to me, Tan said worried. Yes, right? That is a cause of worry. You're like, well, what, why? Why are you not wanting to handle this? Why are you not handling your business? What's going on? So thank you for that. Y'all continue to fill in the blanks. When my child is unmotivated, I usually feel blank. So I'll say this while y'all are also thinking. Y'all, in a recent coaching session, so a mom told me, she was like, listen, I've tried everything. My son just doesn't seem to care anymore. We talked more. It turned out he just was unmotivated, right? So imagine that was, it came across as something else at first. So we're going to talk about some look forwards this evening as well. While we're thinking, why are they so unmotivated? They may not be. Maybe it's masking as something else. So in that particular child's case, it turned out that he was overwhelmed, right? He was starting to get behind, and so he was just burnt out. He was just like, look, I've been trying. I'm overwhelmed. There's too much to do. I'm trying to play catch up. And he was putting in some extra work. So he was burnt out, you all. It was a few different things going on. So the worst thing, though, if we say there was a worst thing of all, he thought that his family had already given up on him. So that was causing him to shift how he approached these things. Because he was like, well, y'all have given up because y'all already, y'all are constantly seeming annoyed and think. So, yeah. So he thought they had given up on him. So we definitely had to have that conversation as well. That remember, and this may be a shift, that that motivation isn't just about willpower, it's about capacity. It's about connection, and it's about clarity. So I'm going to say that part again, you all, because again, sometimes I'm going to be honest. As an adult, I'm still coming to grips with my capacity changing at times, right? Like sometimes, oh yeah, I have a lot of time. I can tend to things. Other times, not as much. So think about that. If we're navigating that as adults, sometimes again, we forget to think about that for our young people. So when we're thinking about motivation, one of the first things I want you to lock in on, one of the first takeaways is motivation is not just a matter of willpower and willingness. It's capacity, right? Are they making these connections? And is there clarity? Do they know what they're supposed to be working on fully, right? Do they know the goal? Okay, I see some conversation here. So I was asking people to fill in the blank earlier, right? I was asking about when my child is unmotivated, I usually feel. So talk to me, Tan said, worried, sometimes annoyed, right? Because there's something else for you to do, something else to remind them about. But yes, burnout is absolutely real. But again, I'm going to say this a lot. I want y'all to say, okay, Anika, we get it. I heard you. We get it. But remembering that our youth, our children, our students, they are young people. So because they are people, they definitely can and do get burnt out as well. So motivation is not just a matter of willpower and willingness. It is not. Capacity, connection, and clarity. Those are our three we're locking in on, okay? All right, y'all. Y'all can tell it's going to be a good one, huh? Ha ha. So, first, before we really push a little harder, there's a few things I want you to think about, right? We're talking about um, some red flags that are giving you some clues about motivation fatigue, I'll say, right? That it's not just they're unmotivated, it's something else going on. So, if you're hearing a lot where your young person is saying, like, I don't care or it doesn't matter, that's clearly a red flag, right? There's something else is going on. Maybe there's endless scrolling, but zero action. So they're scrolling, they're doing things, right? We've heard of doom scrolling. I know I was in a space recently where we talked about that. Y'all let me know if you're familiar with doom scrolling, right? But there's no action happening in real time, right? And not just real time, but in their real space, their real life. So maybe they're shutting down when a task gets hard. They're ready to just quit. As soon as there's any kind of challenge, they're like, that's it. I'm not doing that. And you may have heard the young people, they say this a lot. They talk about rage quitting a lot, rage quit. So that usually comes up on a video game, right? Where they were in the midst of something and it's basically just having a meltdown and sometimes over small things. So like I said, this a video game. It's important to them, but in the big scheme of things, it may not be as important, but it's a big meltdown that occurs. So sometimes they call it rage quit. And we're just making that connection slash they're having a reaction that doesn't match. That's how I would say it in class a lot, right? That was a big reaction. That reaction was too big for what happened, so something else is going on, right? So someone says, my little cousin has been throwing his iPad. He's 8. So one thing about that too, about this rage quit, it's almost, I'm gonna take it back. It is being talked about amongst the young people, like it's normal to react that way. Like, oh, I rage quit. Pause. We all get upset about some things, but we all don't and shouldn't handle it that way. But it's being talked about, right, amongst themselves, clearly, as though it's something normal and typical to react that way. So that's why this is another one of those reasons why it's important to have these conversations. So we're helping them build and set their expectations and clarify, right? We talked about capacity, connection, and clarity. So we can clarify how we react when things are going well, when they aren't, and all of that does feed motivation, right? Whether it's positive or negative, because some people, and then sometimes we can be negatively motivated as well. So, some examples, and I thank the person for chiming in about their little cousin throwing the iPad. Sometimes maybe your person is actually pushing through social anxiety, right? Where you're like, oh, they keep saying, well, I don't care. They're just all these different things. Let me give you some other side of the coin. I know we're talking about the other side of the report card, but another side of the coin, maybe they're pushing through social anxiety. So when it's time to do these group projects, it's just, they absolutely dread it, you all, right? They just never say that out loud though, right? Or they don't have the words to articulate that to you yet. So keep that in mind. Maybe your person is still carrying the embarrassment of getting pulled from honors class last year, right? Maybe they're in regular and standard math class now, and they were in honors last year, so they're carrying some embarrassment about that. Okay, just giving you some things where we're talking about motivation. A lot of times it's not truly a willpower thing. I cannot stress that enough. Y'all might get tired of me saying it this evening, but I want to make sure that it's clear. Maybe they're overwhelmed by comparison. If you missed last week's stream, what we were talking about, right? We talked about self-esteem versus self-worth and the difference and the comparison piece that happens, especially in 2025, how it is easy to compare. We live, honestly, we live in a performance-driven space, a performance-driven world and society. So being very careful about the young people internalizing that comparison, right? So maybe every cousin, maybe every classmate seems to get it faster, or they're thriving better, quote unquote, or that's what it seems like to them. Okay? Especially comparison between siblings. Definitely. But again, it happens. But think about this, because of technology, right? It's happening with more people, because it was probably more common, especially in previous generations, only amongst siblings, or that they would hear most consistently, maybe siblings and classmates. But now it's like it's literally the world. Think about that even at school. How often do we look at and we pull up, okay, this is how your class did. This is how the class down the hall did. This is how our school did. This is how the state did. This is how the state did. Look at how the other states did. This is how y'all see all these different levels that are readily available for comparison. It just goes, it goes. So there's so much comparison that is internalized in things at this point that I don't think we often think about what the kids are soaking up while we're communicating some of that with them, right? As a point of information, but the way that we roll it out is of the utmost importance. So what if your person is really just grieving? What if they're grieving about a recent loss and everyone is expecting them to bounce back? Because what do we love to say? Well, kids are resilient. And not to be funny, but hopefully to give some insight. If children are so resilient, why are most adults that are in therapy and seeking emotional support talking about their childhood then? So should we spend more time developing and building strong children, right? There's the quote, y'all know the quote about strong children, making sure we build and invest and develop strong children so they don't grow up to be broken men. So being very careful about that. So especially when we know things are going on in children's lives, right? Someone could be grieving and we're just expecting them to bounce back. Children are resilient. Well, that has to be developed and built. It should not just be assumed because, again, we know that people grow up to seek support. And often what comes up is things that were learned, whether directly taught or right by association from childhood, if we're going to keep it honest, if we're going to be real about it. What if, and y'all know how I feel about this, I'm closing my eyes talking about it. What if the child is pushing through, again, some internalized messages? I just talked about this. But what if one of them is, I'm just bad at math. Okay, and I talked about this, and we say we don't say I'm bad at math anymore. I'm not a math person. But that's what they're learning because, again, comparison. The other person got it faster. So connecting that idea of speed, or it took me longer. So all these things to be careful about, especially these internal messages, right? So they're trying to push through that. So it is literally a mental thing first. So instead of, they don't just care, they might be emotionally exhausted. They're lazy. No, they just might not know. Where to start, right? They're overwhelmed. That maybe they just need a push. They might need to pause and make a plan, right? Sometimes, so let me just push them. Let me just say what I need to say, give them this good pep talk. Maybe they need the opposite, a timeout and a more concrete plan, a workflow, right? That we like to call it as adults. Y'all, so kids, they're not always lazy. They're not always being defiant. A lot of them are literally pushing through things that we cannot see. Again, it could be the shame we talked about, being demoted, right, from a different class, honors class, to a regular class, quote unquote, gen ed. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's a fear of failure. Maybe it is, again, some unspoken embarrassment. Y'all, it's a long list of things. It could even be their executive skills, executive function skills, right? Their organization, they're overwhelmed and overloaded and they need some help. That's what we should be learning to recognize and see as their adults. That's what part of this conversation is. Sheila said, yes, excellent point. Right, children being resilient. Yeah, so that's always a thing. I've thought about that a lot. Like people really say that, well, children are resilient, and there's that assumption, but it still has to be developed, though, right? Still has to be developed. Okay, so while we're talking about this, let me go back for a minute. What is a motivation trick that you've tried before and it didn't work out? I was looking at some reels yesterday online. What is a motivation trick that you tried, but it didn't go so well? It did not work out. Someone said the comparisons and how extensive. Comparisons are quite extensive at this point. Even if the intention is good, like I said, sometimes, especially in the classroom, we're letting them one period know how they did compared to the other, how Mrs. Jones' class did compared to Mrs. Porter's class. And it just keeps going up from there. So next thing you know, we're comparing to the whole world. But what's being learned through those comparisons? Okay, you got me excited again. Let me ask my question again. And I'm going to give y'all some time to think about it. Type it in the chat. Y'all, what's a motivation trick, right, that you've tried that didn't work? What's a motivation trick that you tried before that did not work? I'm going to share some common ones. Y'all let me know. Y'all say, oh, yes. If that's you, if I read one of yours, let me know. So telling them that they can have 30 minutes of video games after they finish math. I've done that, right? So maybe they just rush through, right? And then there's still a meltdown if things go wrong, if their problems are not correct, right? So motivation tricks that you've tried that did not work. So sometimes someone said encouraging words, maybe stickers, a fun activity after. Y'all, sometimes a reward chart It might work for a couple days, and after it, it was a negotiation too. Like, you understand, I'm about to move. I know the color chart, right? For depending on the age. All right, so you should be moving to orange for this one, right? That again, especially depending on the age, depending on the consistency, it may not work. So, saying, if you love me, you'll do it for me, y'all, that can come with instant guilt and an eye roll. So, if we want the motivation to be genuine, we want it to be internal and intrinsic, right? Coming from the inside, we have to stay away from that one. So, someone said the usual pep talk. Yeah, we should have a couple. We have to switch it up, right? We have to switch it up. What if one of your usual or quick motivation tips was setting a timer, and that made the young person panic instead of focus? So this is all of this. We're talking about a lot of these different examples, but this is when it really comes time to, you have to lock in and know your young people, your person, right? If you know that timing is something that kind of makes your person feel overwhelmed, a timer may not be the move. Be more of a checklist. Okay, so check it as you go. Check it as you go. Someone said, "Ooh, I've seen this one, especially when I have done progress monitoring." Yes. And slash, you're telling on yourself because they're not used to it, so they're panicking. So maybe not even all at once. Maybe we work up to a timer for the entire task, but maybe even if it's a timer for a part of the task, right? But if it's like, I'm setting this timer for you to do your whole, they're not used to that. They're freaking out. You're upset. You're annoyed. You might be frustrated, maybe a little bit angry even. Now, what about this? Have you ever tried this motivation trick? Saying, okay, we'll go out for ice cream after homework. But then they started to withhold their effort unless there was a deal, right? They expect a deal every time. I know I've heard and had this conversation with a lot of elementary teachers because the reward system, the consistent rewarding of things that should be happening anyway, things that we want them to develop their own agency about, their own skills, their own motivation about, then they always start looking for the reward if we're not careful. Okay. Let's see. Someone said, when I noticed, I started to implement practice rounds. Yes, with the timer, right? We have practice rounds to get them used to it. Let me know if that's what you're talking about. Slash, even a timer per section versus, oh my gosh, this is one big timer. I don't know what to do. So, one thing to think about here is, with all of those really have in common, all these different examples we've been given, I appreciate y'all chiming in the chat, is that we're trying to really force behavior without nurturing the belief, the connection, or the confidence. We're like, how can I get us here quickly? How can I get us here? We're trying to force a behavior again without developing that belief, without developing the connection, and without working on their confidence with them. Let's see in the chat. This one, you're not going to get rewarded for something you are supposed to do. You should not, but being honest, it happens a lot. It happens a lot. And that's at home and at school, if we're going to be honest. Okay, it happens. And I'll just say, because I'll go down a rabbit hole. It happens a lot. So when the kids feel like they're being baited, we're trying to cut deals and negotiate. If they feel like they're being baited instead of believed in, y'all, it's going to backfire. It's going to, because motivation, real motivation, authentic motivation, internal motivation grows from voice, right? Us speaking into them, letting them develop their positive internal voice. Motivation develops from value, right? Them understanding the big scheme of the why. Why do we have to do this? Why are we working on this? And then also motivation grows from agency. So meaning them having some choice, some autonomy while they're working. And so we're going to talk about how to do that in a way that's productive and efficient. Okay. Well, I have some tools for y'all. So Some things that fall on the side of manipulation, if you just worked harder, you'd be done by now. Maybe, maybe not, because it may be struggling. So we have to be careful about that. We could swap that with, let's figure out where to start together, right? Maybe, I need to be showing y'all another slide. Haha. Okay. So we also will work on, you won't get screen time until your packet's finished. We can swap that with, what feels like the biggest block right now? Because something is obviously something that's holding you up, right? So what feels like the biggest block? A common manipulation phrase, do it for me, please. I just need you to cooperate. A swap with, how could we make this task more doable? What do we need? How can we get this done? Right? So y'all tell me what y'all think about these swaps. Tell me what y'all think about these swaps. Take a screenshot if you need to. Come back to the video, like, save, share. Make sure you hit the bell to get notified when we go live, right? But it's every Sunday. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Okay, cool. All right, y'all. So these swap outs, now we're talking about some of the strategies. So we're going to jump into 3. We don't want to do too much. Y'all know I have a whole tool belt in the arsenal. Okay. We're going to do 3, focus on 3. So 3 tools really to help you recharge motivation. One is goal mapping. So remember earlier we said sometimes instead of saying, let me give them a push, this good pep talk, maybe they need the opposite. Instead of the push, we need the timeout, the pause, and then a plan. So goal mapping will be the plan, helping them. Okay, so this is where we're starting, meaning where are we now? The start, where are we now? What are we working on? The stuck point, what's getting in the way? The micro step, what's one small action we can try? And then the AC check, the A means accountability check. Yeah, that was a little long to put on the slide, right? Haha. So the AC check is the accountability check. Let me give you a home example and a classroom example. So start on the home side. I want to finish my summer reading list. Stuck point. I get bored halfway through and end up on my phone. Or maybe they were like me, right? I would fall asleep a lot when I was reading as a child. Micro step. Let's try 10 pages. Let's try 10 pages a day before we do screen time. And we'll set a timer. So I said one. One, we're setting a timer. They know what the expectation is before they jump into it, before they get started, right? Because we talked about being careful in the practice rounds. Sometimes that might be necessary with the timer. So this will be a little mini one. This will be a practice round within itself. And then the AC check, the accountability check, we'll check in after 3 days to see what's working or not. Now, with this accountability check, I cannot stress enough checking in pretty quickly, not letting a whole week go by to turn around and say, you haven't done anything. You're not where I thought you would be. We need to check in 2 or 3 days. We're checking in like this, right? We are inspecting what we expect. We have to lean in and check in on it. Classroom example. So your starting point, you want to get your missing assignments done. Stuck point, it feels like too many to even get started. Oh my goodness. Micro step, pick 2. Just pick 2 from today. We'll knock those out. Let's do it. The AC check, the accountability check back in with me tomorrow after lunch. We'll build from there. But you supported them as they got started, right? So quick goal mapping, y'all. It doesn't have to be anything extensive. I know that we love SMART goals. I know that we do. We want to have the SMART every time, but sometimes we have to do a quick goal map to get them started because we need them to start, right? Usually once we get started, it flows a lot smoother. We just need to know where to start and have a plan to get there. So make sure for this micro step, like this is a big tip. Make sure for the micro step that the young person says it out loud, right? Because again, building their voice and helping them take ownership. building their voice and helping them take ownership. Remember, this whole thing would have been created with them, maybe giving them some ideas, suggestions, but ultimately letting them choose, because we want to build their voice and their agency, because motivation, that's like one of the two pillars, two of the three pillars of motivation. Okay. Now, keep the goals visible. We know that they're doable, and we make sure that the student, again, is at the center, that they're student driven. Any questions about the goal mapping? Did it feel like a big deal? Does it feel like this is something that, okay, if a student is stuck, my child is stuck, we can do this really quickly? It's not such a big deal to do. And I understand the importance of having to check in day 2, day 3, coming right behind it. Y'all let me know. The goal mapping. All right. Number 2, shared planning. So we'll talk through this one, the shared planning. And so honestly, it's not so different from the goal mapping, but it's just getting a little bit more detailed. And it's not anything that is extra unusual here. So it's more so talking about, yeah, we have the time of day you're going to focus on it. It's the task that you're going to focus on, any breaks that you need, right? Check-in times, what went well. I have some screenshots up here for you. What I changed next time. So basically what's different with the shared planning is more so the reflection piece on the back end. So in between, like you've already planned out, this is what I'm focusing on. Yes, I've written down my breaks. Then after that whole session is done, more of the reflection piece. So again, what went well? What would you change? But also a very big deal, this last section, you see, and I made it a little bigger. So the bonus part, what support do you want / maybe need? Right? And it could say stay nearby, but quiet. Remind me if I get stuck. Let me work alone. Check in at the end. You all of these things. So again, this shared planning is more so, it is accountability, but it is also opening up the conversation about the goal, causing the reflection. I cannot stress enough reflection while we're supporting, working with, talking to, and with our young people. We have to reflect. We have to prompt them to reflect as well. So there's always going to be that embedded in holistic fluency work. Okay, Sheila said goal mapping seems like a very doable and useful tool, can be quickly executed. Excellent, excellent. Because the reality is we're busy. We're busy. I was texting with a cousin earlier. He was like, yes. He said, we all are running in a million different directions. It's hard to connect. It's hard to get together. It is. It truly is. So we want to make sure we are sharing information, sharing resources, that we can do the important things, the intentional things, but it doesn't feel like a weight, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is a heavy lift. That's never the goal. The goal is you can pick it up and use it immediately. Okay, good. Thank you for that feedback. All right, third tool. So for this tool, the choice board. Okay, so I'll say this one. This one, it is very extensive, has some things built in, but talking about how this will work. So at one point, these were things right on the social emotional side that I was working with some students on, understanding and developing their conflict resolution skills, developing growth mindset, and multiple intelligences. So when we have a choice board, we have different ways that you're giving students. So we're talking about their student voice, again, student agency, different ways that we're having students interact with a particular topic. Now, when we're talking about motivation, though, I'm going to swap out the topic. So in this case, we won't be thinking about conflict, growth mindset, or multiple intelligences, but maybe one of the options is review something, right? Another option is, okay, we're going to apply something. For example, like if it was growth mindset, then they would talk about, or they would tell about, make a video about, just a lot of options, how they applied growth mindset. So another option could be just regroup and recenter. We talked about pressing pause. We talked about pressing pause and sometimes being supported with a plan. So that's always an option, slash just trying something new. Sometimes shifting your thoughts, shifting your attention for a moment causes a big breakthrough, slash with the try something new that could even be trying a different approach to a problem you've been having. Motivation wise, have your young people, whether at home or in the classroom, excuse me, pick 2 or 3 a day or maybe a week based on their capacity and goals. Coming back to capacity, because we said a lot of what is being misread as lack of motivation is a capacity issue. It's a capacity issue, right? Besides overwhelm, navigating other emotions, it's a capacity issue. Like they literally cannot. It's overwhelmed. We're shutting down. It's a lot of other things happening, right? Shame, guilt, embarrassment. We went through a lot of them earlier in the stream. So if you missed it, please make sure you go back and catch it from the beginning. But choice board, where you're having them again work through 2 to 3 a day, maybe per week, based on their capacity and goals. So it's almost like a game. Sometimes you can set it up like tic-tac-toe. You can set it up like bingo, right? If you want more of an example of that, um, it is a type of choice board, but making sure that if you go to our bio link, we have some test anxiety bingo boards, actually, some for elementary, well, one for elementary, one for secondary. And you can kind of see the structure for how the young people can choose their different tasks and work through them, but especially as they may be avoiding anxiety or trying to make sure they're navigating in a healthy way, test anxiety. So we have some tasks and some things there. Okay. All right. So one more time, if we're rethinking, I don't care if at face value, I don't care. We're thinking that they're having a motivation issue. Some things to watch for to let you know that it's something a bit deeper. That it could be sarcasm that's masking as anxiety, right? It could be disconnection from body language, right? You could just tell that they are not all the way tuned in and it's not in sync, their body language, slash, it could be perfectionism that's posing as apathy, that they actually care quite a lot. Actually, I'm going to say too much because they're striving for perfection and perfection is unattainable. It's not a real thing, right? But they're playing it off. They're like, oh, I don't care. But internally, they're mulling over it. They're beating themselves up, tearing themselves down. Okay. So these are just some things to look for and rethinking. Y'all, it's not that they don't care. There's some other things happening behind the scenes, below the surface. Okay. All right. Someone said, great. Thank you in advance of use of the choice board resource. Yes, yes. So, and you know what? And I'll go back to the choice board again for a minute. So lots of options. And this is like when you really want to build it out that much more and maybe make it more advanced, you can always have specific places for them to go. You see here we have like links that are like, okay, go watch this video on YouTube. Check out this post on TikTok. Just it can be that specific, slash where they're going around different social media, they're recording a video, they're journaling, they're creating a poem, finding a quote. There's so many options. But again, you're making sure that you're giving them the choice, right, for which things they do. Like, they're choosing from the board that was created. So it can be a board that you all create together. You could, but when it comes to like some of the links and you want to kind of be specific for something like this, like songs and music, then we may want to have something preset. We may want to have something preset as much as possible. All right, so we talked about this, things to look for, and being careful that we're not fooled by what we're thinking is really apathy when there's something else masking. So, y'all, what we can do from here, name the fatigue. Name the fatigue without judgment. We just talked about some look fors, right? A lot of times we want to say, like, well, you've been staring at that screen for a while. Slash, what if we continued that thought with, well, do you want to talk about how your brain feels right now? So we can avoid you're wasting time again. Try, it looks like something's draining you. Let's pause. Let's call timeout. The purpose of that, if we name the fatigue without judgment, the kids will feel seen. They'll feel seen. They won't feel ashamed. And this opens the door to support. This opens the door for more, for support in more depth. Number two, if we rebuild agency, one decision at a time, fight the feeling. Fight the feeling instead of, why didn't you do it? Try, would you rather start with this or that? Right? Which one would you rather start with? This one or that one? Or want to choose where we do this? You want to work here in the living room, or do you want to sit at the table in the kitchen? So rebuilding choices, rebuilding that agency, right? Having them make the decisions as you're building what has to happen, as you're building and setting up the task as the adult. So the purpose of that is these small decisions, y'all, they have a big impact though, a big impact on their motivation, and it flips the dynamic from control to collaboration. If we're flipping the dynamic, more of a collaborative situation, think about this. Sometimes when people are struggling with their younger person, right, especially a little person, when they're struggling with a younger person with their eating habits, they're a picky eater, what do people often say? Oh, get them in the kitchen, let them cook with you, right? They'll take some ownership, even if they're cutting up these onions, these green peppers, the carrots, what have you, right? They'll be that much more excited about it when it's time to eat because they're taking some ownership of it, because they helped build it, they helped create it. Same thing. We want to make sure that we're able to give appropriate choices where you can, because there's a lot of places where we could let young people choose, but we're just glossing through it. We're just going through it. So make sure you're giving them that choice, because it helps to shift from, okay, I'm trying to control to motivate you, versus, no, you understand, you're a part of the process, we're collaborating while you're rolling through. Okay. Number three, offering structure with support, not one or the other. So let's make the plan together. And the structure, it could be, again, we talked about a few things. We talked about the choice board, we talked about the shared planning, and we talked about the goal setting, right? But it could also be just a checklist for the task. It could be making sure that they know the workflow of a short workflow and then a break. It could be just co-working side by side as adults, right? I know, and I see some people on here, co-working is what we do. Literally, right? I know we like to use the word co-workers, but even in virtual life, sometimes we might just log into a Zoom and everybody's working just for accountability's sake. We're locked in all at the same time. We're in it to win it. So we can avoid, well, you have to get this done now. You have to. Instead, we can say, you know what, let's break this down, and I'll be nearby if you want a thought partner, if you need a thought partner. Look at that shift. Okay. The purpose, it keeps the adult as a coach, not as a commander. Right? Many people have lived through what do as I say, not as I do, but we know the reality is they're watching. They're watching and listening, right? So watching first, though. Watching first. So with those in mind, I wanted to invite you to learn more about how holistic fluency can support you in these as we're developing these skills, as we're making sure we understand and have lots of tools in our tool belt. So you can join our parent cohort. You all, there's a link for that in our bio link. If you want to buy the digital resource, the SEL bundle, as you continue to learn and grow and apply some of the things that, a lot of times we thought about it more so as something for adults. but we need to be working through and learning about a lot of this with our young people. So, just parts of conversation starters sometimes, reflection tools. As I told you, we're super serious about reflection and just emotional skill builders. Then the parent SEL bundle is for you. And again, for the cohort, let me be clear though, that parenting is not about parenting perfectly, because again, that's not a thing, right? And that's not what we're striving for, but we are striving to parent with intention and on purpose. Okay, we make sure we include strategy, reflection, again, and community. So if that's intriguing to you, make sure that you join the parent cohort, because we're starting soon. We're starting at the end of, I'm saying the end of the summer, but end of school summer. So the end of August, early September is when we're starting. Y'all make sure that you sign up for our email list, because we have so many resources we have been building this summer, especially to release, to support, to write, so we can avoid this summer slump, if you will. But I also want to say they're not going to be free resources forever, ever, and ever and ever. So make sure you sign up now so you can get the resources now, because after a bit, that is going to shift. So if you're here early, go you. All right. Y'all, for next week, let me tell you this real quick. Next week, make sure you join us here again, 6 o'clock on YouTube. We're getting into kind of, we call them communication loops, right? Wondering, does your child even hear me? Do they even hear what I'm saying? So we're going to make sure we restructure and rewrite some communication loops so we don't feel as drained, repeating ourselves, talking about the same things over and over. We're going to do some decoding where your child hears when you speak. Y'all, at Holistic Fluency, we listen, we learn, and we create space for children to understand and to grow. So thank you so much for joining this evening. You got some good tools and takeaways, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. All right, bye-bye.